I am Sophia Harrison, 32 years old. Imagine flying 12 hours through 3 delays, carrying your father's favorite $400 bourbon as a surprise, only to overhear your mother plotting to steal your $3.2 million inheritance. The betrayal cut deeper because I'd just signed the biggest contract of my career, one that would soon expose their greed to 500 of Boston's most influential people. My mother thought I was a failure who needed to be handled. My sister laughed about taking Grandma's house guilt-free. They had no idea that in exactly 14 days, their entire social circle would witness the truth at the Boston Literary Awards. Before I share how karma served them a 5-course meal of humiliation, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about family betrayal and poetic justice. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now let me tell you about the night that changed everything. The Harrison family weekend had been a tradition for 23 years. Every November, 50 members of our extended family would descend upon Boston's Fairmont Copley Plaza for 3 days of orchestrated bonding. My mother, Victoria Harrison, treated it like her personal society debut, ensuring every detail reflected the family's supposed prominence. The marble lobby would echo with air kisses and calculated compliments, while bellhops wheeled in Louis Vuitton luggage and garment bags from Neiman Marcus. I'd attended every single one since I was 9, watching my role evolve from Victoria's bright daughter to Victoria's daughter, who's still finding her way. The shift happened gradually, then suddenly. In college, I was the English major with promise. By 25, I was the one who chose writing over stability. By 30, I'd become the cautionary tale mothers whispered about during cocktail hour. "This is Sophia. She's exploring her options," my mother would say. That practiced pause before exploring, hanging in the air like expensive perfume. Meanwhile, my younger sister Madison would be introduced as the lawyer at Morrison and Associates, just made senior associate at 29, youngest in the firm's history. The ballroom where we held our welcome dinner could seat 200, but our family filled only the front section, leaving an echo of empty space that somehow made our gathering feel both intimate and hollow. The chandeliers cast golden light on the same faces, the same conversations, the same subtle hierarchies that had calcified over decades. Uncle Richard still dominated the head table with his real estate war stories. Aunt Margaret still clutched her pearls while gossiping about whoever wasn't in the room. And I still sat at the same spot at the same table, nursing the same glass of Chablis, wondering why I kept coming back. Last year's dinner crystallized exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Madison had just closed a $2 million acquisition for a tech startup, and the entire table hung on her every word as she described the negotiations. "The key," she said, twirling her Cartier bracelet, "is never showing weakness. These Silicon Valley boys think they can intimidate a woman, but I had them signing exactly where I wanted." When the applause died down, my mother turned to me with that smile that never reached her eyes. "And Sophia, dear, anything new with your writing?" I'd actually just signed a $500,000 contract for my 4th book, but the words died in my throat as Madison cut in. "Oh, Sophia's still doing her blog thing, right? What's it called again?" "I'm working on a new project," I said quietly. "It's actually quite—" "You know," Victoria interrupted, "Harrison and Associates is looking for a social media coordinator. It's entry level, but it would give you real experience, benefits, stability, a path forward. I could make a call." The table nodded in unison, a choreographed sympathy that felt rehearsed. "Writing is a wonderful hobby," Aunt Margaret chimed in, "but you need a real career, sweetheart. You're not getting any younger." I smiled, nodded, and swallowed the truth along with my wine. S.H. Montgomery's latest book had spent 6 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, but Sophia Harrison was still the family failure who needed career advice from people who hadn't read a book since college. The irony tasted bitter, but I'd learned to acquire the taste. What they didn't know was that Sterling Publishing had been courting me for months, and I was about to sign the deal that would change everything. 6 months before that family weekend, I'd been sitting in my Cambridge apartment when the email arrived that would reshape my entire life. James Sterling himself, CEO of Sterling Publishing House, had written personally, "Ms. Harrison, or should I say Ms. Montgomery, we need to discuss your future. What you've built deserves an empire, not just books." The meeting that followed took place in a private room at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Sterling had laid out terms that made my hands shake. $8.5 million over 5 years, guaranteed marketing budget of $2 million, first look film rights with Paramount Pictures. There was only one unusual clause. My identity would remain secret until the Boston Literary Awards in November, where the reveal would be orchestrated for maximum impact. "Mystery sells," Sterling had explained. S.H. Montgomery is the biggest enigma in publishing. When we reveal you, it needs to be an event. The Literary Awards is perfect. 500 attendees, full media coverage, and— he'd smiled. "Your mother is on the Fairmont's board, isn't she? She'll have a front row seat." I'd chosen the pseudonym carefully. S.H. for Sophia Harrison. Hidden in plain sight. Montgomery was my grandmother's maiden name, a woman who'd written poetry in secret while raising 3 children in the 1960s. She'd left me her house and her journals, pages filled with dreams deferred but never destroyed. The contract included a $2 million penalty for breaking the confidentiality clause before the reveal date. It seemed excessive then, but Sterling insisted. "This isn't just about books anymore, Sophia. This is about creating a moment that the literary world won't forget." Looking back, I think part of me knew even then that the reveal would be about more than just my career. But that night at the Fairmont, everything would shift into focus. My grandmother Eleanor's house stood on Beacon Hill like a Victorian time capsule, all original crown molding and hand-carved banisters that whispered stories with every creak. The latest assessment had valued it at $3.2 million, though its worth to me couldn't be measured in numbers. This was where I'd written my first story at age 7, curled up in the window seat overlooking the Charles River, where grandmother would serve me Earl Grey in china cups and say, "Words are power, Sophia. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." She'd passed 2 years ago, leaving the house equally to her 3 granddaughters in her will. Madison had immediately suggested selling, calculating her share down to the penny. Our cousin Jennifer, living in Seattle, had agreed. She needed the money for her startup. But I'd refused, offering to buy them out over time once my writing took off. They'd laughed. Madison actually laughed. "With what money?" she'd said. "Your Medium articles? Sophia, be realistic." The house had remained in limbo since then, a trust maintaining it while we 3 granddaughters remained at an impasse. But I'd noticed my mother and Madison growing increasingly agitated about it lately. Victoria's real estate company, Harrison Developments, had been hemorrhaging money since a waterfront project went belly up. 3 investors had pulled out, lawsuits were pending, and rumors suggested they were $800,000 in debt. Madison, meanwhile, had been living far beyond her means, trying to keep up with the other partners at her firm. The Hermès bags, the weekend trips to the vineyard, the new Tesla, it all added up. I'd overheard her on a call last month, voice tight with panic, negotiating a payment extension on her credit cards. Grandmother's house had become their potential lifeline. They just needed me out of the way. The waterfront at Harrison Bay was supposed to be my mother's crowning achievement. 40 luxury condos with harbor views, marketed to Boston's new tech money. She'd leveraged everything: the company's assets, her reputation, even borrowed against her own properties. The architectural models had dominated her office. Tiny, perfect people living tiny, perfect lives in buildings that would never be completed. The project collapsed in September when environmental surveys revealed contamination from an old shipping facility. Cleanup alone would cost $2 million. The investors fled like rats from a sinking ship, and Victoria was left holding contracts she couldn't fulfill and debts she couldn't pay. $800,000 to be exact, due by month's end, or Harrison Developments would face bankruptcy. Madison's situation was equally desperate. though she hid it better. 300,000 in debt from trying to project success she hadn't earned yet. I'd seen the receipts she'd tried to write off as business expenses: designer clothes for client meetings, first-class flights for networking, a $40,000 watch because perception is everything in law. My father, Robert, had tried to intervene, suggesting they downsize, regroup, maybe even ask for help. But Victoria had shut him down with surgical precision. Harrison women don't retreat, Robert. We advance. The family weekend invitation this year had felt different, more urgent. The gold embossed cards sent out 2 months early, the repeated follow-ups to ensure attendance, the agenda that included a family financial planning session on Saturday afternoon. I should have seen it coming. Desperation makes people predictable, and my mother had never been more desperate than she was that November. But I'd wanted to surprise them. To walk in with Dad's favorite bourbon and finally tell them about my success. God, I'd been so naive. If you've ever been dismissed by family because of your career choices, leave a comment below. I want to hear your story. And if you're curious about what happens next, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the dramatic climax of this tale. I stood outside the presidential suite, holding the bottle of Pappy Van Winkle 23 year, my father's favorite bourbon that had cost me $400 and a favor from a collector in Cambridge. The hallway was empty, lit by sconces that threw shadows like reaching fingers across the burgundy carpet. Through the door, I could hear voices, my mother's crystalline tone cutting through the murmur of conversation. If she just signed it away, that inheritance could clear our debts. My hand froze on the door handle. Madison's laugh followed, bright and cruel. Or we could finally take Grandma's house guilt-free. She's never going to amount to anything anyway. The paperwork is ready, Victoria continued. Jonathan drew it up pro bono. He owes me for the Riverside deal. A simple quitclaim deed. She signs over her portion of the inheritance to cover family obligations. We frame it as helping the family legacy. And if she refuses? Madison asked. She won't. Sophia has always been weak. We'll apply pressure during the weekend, let the entire family know she's the only thing standing between us and stability. Guilt is a powerful motivator, especially for someone so desperate for approval. Uncle Richard's already on board, Madison added. He thinks Sophia's being selfish, sitting on prime real estate while the family business struggles. My mother's heels clicked against the floor. She was pacing, planning. Saturday's family meeting. We'll present it as a generous offer. She keeps living in her little apartment, pursuing her little dreams, and we handle the burden of the estate. Everyone wins. She's so pathetic, Madison said. 32 and still pretending she's going to make it as a writer. At least this way, Grandma's house goes to someone who can actually do something with it. I set the bourbon bottle on the floor and walked away. I should have left immediately, but something made me duck into an alcove near the service elevator. The suite door opened, and Madison stepped into the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, by November 30th, she was saying. The bank won't extend again. I know, but after this weekend, I'll have the funds. A pause. My sister? Please, she'll cave the moment Mom applies pressure. She always does. Victoria emerged behind her, typing on her phone. Jonathan, confirm you'll be available Sunday morning for the signing. Yes, bring 3 copies. She looked up at Madison. Your father doesn't know about this. Dad's been useless lately, Madison replied. All he does is suggest we live within our means, as if that's an option anymore. Your father lacks vision, Victoria said coldly. He's never understood that maintaining status requires risk. The waterfront project would have worked if those environmental zealots hadn't. She stopped herself. No matter. After this weekend, we'll have the capital to recover. They walked past my hiding spot, close enough that I could smell Victoria's signature Chanel perfume. Madison was scrolling through her phone, showing Victoria something. Look, she posted another one of her writing motivation quotes on Instagram. Success is the best revenge. God, she's so cringy. Let her have her little mantras, Victoria said. By Sunday night, she'll have signed everything over, and we can finally stop pretending her writing hobby matters. The family meeting is at 2 o'clock. I've arranged for everyone to be there, all 50 of them. Public pressure is remarkably effective. They disappeared around the corner, their laughter echoing off the walls. I stood there for a full minute, processing what I'd heard. Then I pulled out my phone and did something I should have done years ago. I chose myself. The Uber driver didn't ask questions when I slid into the back seat at 11:47 p.m., still in my cocktail dress and heels. Logan Airport, please. International Terminal. As Boston blurred past the window, I pulled up the airline app. There was a red-eye to Miami leaving at 2:15 a.m., connecting to Costa Rica. I booked it without hesitation, then turned off my phone completely. No tracking, no Find My iPhone, no last-minute guilt texts to pull me back. The bottle of Pappy Van Winkle sat in the hallway outside the presidential suite, a $400 goodbye that they'd probably never understand. Or maybe they would. Victoria appreciated expensive gestures, even if she never appreciated me. At the airport, I bought a change of clothes from the overpriced travel shop: yoga pants, a Boston University sweatshirt, sneakers. In the bathroom, I transformed from Sophia Harrison, family disappointment, to just another traveler escaping winter. The cocktail dress went in the trash. While waiting at the gate, I opened my laptop and pulled up the email from Eleanor Whitmore, chair of the Boston Literary Awards. We're thrilled to confirm S.H. Montgomery as our author of the year. The reveal will be spectacular, the literary event of the season. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to disappear, to let them stew in their own panic, to prepare for the moment when their entire social world would discover exactly who they'd been dismissing all these years. I typed a quick email to James Sterling. Small change of plans. I'll be working remotely until the awards. The reveal is still on. His response came immediately, despite the late hour. Whatever you need, Sophia. This is your moment. As the plane lifted off, Boston shrinking to a cluster of lights below, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: freedom. The villa in Tamarindo, Costa Rica, overlooked the Pacific with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the ocean feel like an extension of the living room. I'd rented it for 2 weeks, using the S.H. Montgomery corporate card, a perk of being Sterling Publishing's most valuable asset. As I set up my laptop on the terrace, the numbers still felt surreal. The Montgomery Chronicles had sold over 2 million copies globally. Book 1 alone had been translated into 37 languages. The audiobook rights had gone for 6 figures. Foreign markets were begging for more. My anonymous Twitter account, where I posted writing advice as S.H. Montgomery, had 300,000 followers hanging on every word. The new contract with Sterling was even more staggering: 8.5 million over 5 years, plus bonuses tied to sales milestones I'd already been hitting. The movie rights negotiation with Paramount was in final stages: 3 million upfront, with points on the back end if the franchise took off. James Sterling had sent me a screenshot of my Amazon rankings that morning. All 5 Montgomery Chronicles books were in the top 100, with Book 3 sitting at number 1 for the 42nd consecutive week. You realize, his email read, you're outselling Stephen King right now? The irony was delicious. Madison had mocked my little blog, while my books earned more in a month than she made in a year. Victoria claimed I needed a real career, while my corporation, Montgomery Enterprises LLC, had just hired its 5th employee to manage licensing deals. But the best part? The mystery. S.H. Montgomery was publishing's biggest enigma. Theories ranged from a retired CIA agent to a tech billionaire's wife. BookTube channels devoted entire episodes to analyzing my writing style for clues. No one suspected the family disappointment sipping wine in Costa Rica. The confidentiality clause in my Sterling contract was airtight and strategically brilliant: $2 million in penalties if I revealed my identity before the Boston Literary Awards, enough to ensure I wouldn't crack under family pressure or wine-fueled confession. But more importantly, it gave James Sterling complete control over the reveal narrative. Think of it as a product launch, he'd explained during our last meeting. Apple doesn't leak the iPhone specs months early. They control the moment, the message, the impact. S.H. Montgomery's reveal needs to be an event that reshapes the literary landscape. The Boston Literary Awards was perfect for multiple reasons. 500 attendees, including publishers, agents, critics, and Boston's cultural elite. Full media coverage from the Boston Globe, Publishers Weekly, and NPR. Live streaming to thousands of viewers. And the delicious detail that made it all worthwhile. The event was held at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, where Victoria served on the board and would be required to attend by protocol. She'd already been bragging about it for months, telling everyone how she'd be sitting at the VIP table, rubbing shoulders with literary giants. She had no idea she'd be watching her dismissed daughter accept the industry's highest honor. James had orchestrated every detail. The announcement would come during the main ceremony, after dinner when everyone was relaxed but before they were drunk. Eleanor Whitmore would read the achievement list. The screens would display S.H. Montgomery's book covers, and then the reveal. My photo, my real name, my moment. Your mother's reaction will be priceless, James had chuckled. Make sure someone's recording. I'd laughed then. But now, staring at the ocean from my Costa Rica refuge, I realized this wasn't about humiliating her. It was about finally being seen for who I really was. The guest list for the Boston Literary Awards read like a who's who of American letters. Publishers from the Big Five, literary agents who could make or break careers, critics whose reviews moved markets, and Boston's social elite who treated these events like the Met Gala of books. 500 people who mattered, all in one room. Victoria had forwarded me the seating chart weeks ago, back when she still thought I'd be her plus one, sitting quietly at table 12 while she networked. The VIP tables were strategically placed, publishers at table 1, major donors at 2, board members at 3. Victoria would be at table 3, perfectly positioned to see the stage, to be seen by everyone who mattered. The media coverage was extensive. Boston Globe had 3 reporters assigned. Publishers Weekly was doing a live blog. NPR would broadcast excerpts on Weekend Edition. The Guardian's U.S. correspondent had RSVP'd. Every moment would be documented, photographed, tweeted, and analyzed. The award itself, Author of the Year, came with a $100,000 prize and a guaranteed lecture tour. But more importantly, it was the kind of recognition that redefined careers. Past winners had gone on to Pulitzers, to Hollywood adaptations, to cultural immortality. Victoria had been telling everyone about her involvement with the event. Her Facebook posts were embarrassingly eager. So honored to be part of bringing literary excellence to Boston, and can't wait to celebrate the best in contemporary fiction. She'd even bought a new Oscar de la Renta gown, had her photos taken for the Boston Society pages. Meanwhile, Madison had been posting about attending with the family, positioning herself as a patron of the arts. Their social circles were fully invested in this event. They had no idea they were about to become supporting characters in my story. The panic started at 7:43 a.m. when Madison knocked on my hotel room door. I know the exact time because she later posted about it in the family group chat I was still monitoring from Costa Rica. Where the hell is Sophia? By 8:15, she'd called 14 times. Victoria had called 23. The voicemails escalated from confused to angry to frantic. Sophia, this is unacceptable. Then, where are you? People are asking. Then, if this is some kind of tantrum, it's not funny. The family weekend breakfast was scheduled for 9 o'clock. 50 relatives gathering in the Fairmont's private dining room, and for the first time in 23 years, I wasn't there. The empty chair at table 4 became a scandal. Aunt Margaret asked if I was ill. Uncle Richard suggested I was probably hungover. Madison told everyone I'd had a creative crisis and left suddenly. But the bourbon bottle changed everything. A housekeeper found it outside the presidential suite and, thinking it was forgotten, brought it to Victoria during breakfast. The card was still attached. For Dad, love, Sophia. Madison went pale. She knew I'd been there right outside the door. The security footage confirmed it. Me standing in the hallway at 11:31 p.m., setting down the bottle, walking away. The timestamp showed I'd been there during their conversation about stealing my inheritance. She knows, Madison whispered to Victoria in a video she accidentally sent to the family chat before deleting it. Oh God, she knows everything. Victoria tried damage control, telling the relatives I'd had a work emergency, but 50 Harrisons aren't stupid. They smelled blood in the water. The family financial planning session that afternoon would be missing its key player, and everyone knew something had gone catastrophically wrong. Victoria's text came at 2:47 p.m., right as the family meeting was supposed to start. Sophia, this is incredibly selfish. Everyone is here for you. We're trying to help you. Madison tried a different approach. Hey, sis, we're worried. Just let us know you're okay. Then Uncle Richard, your mother says you're having some kind of episode. Very disappointing. They didn't know I was reading everything from a beach chair in Tamarindo, watching the sun set over the Pacific while they imploded 3,000 miles away. Madison had tried to track my credit cards, but the S.H. Montgomery corporate card didn't show up on any family accounts. My phone location was off. I'd become a ghost. The family meeting proceeded without me. According to cousin Jennifer, who texted me privately, your mom is saying you're overwhelmed by family pressure and needed space. Madison keeps checking her phone. What's really going on? I sent back a simple response. I need time to think. Please don't worry. But Victoria wasn't done. She called my landlord, my few friends she knew about, even reached out to my old college roommate on Facebook. The story kept changing. I was sick, I was working, I was having a breakdown. The desperation was showing, and the relatives were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Why is Sophia's absence such a crisis? Aunt Patricia asked in the family chat. It's not like she's ever been central to these gatherings. Madison jumped in. We're just concerned. She's been struggling financially and emotionally. We want to help. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. But in 10 days at the Literary Awards, with 500 witnesses and media coverage, the truth would be impossible to spin. The villa in Tamarindo became my war room. 3 laptops set up on the dining table, one for video calls with Sterling, one for monitoring social media, one for writing my acceptance speech. The walls were covered with sticky notes mapping out the reveal timeline down to the minute. James Sterling called every morning at 9 Pacific time. The anticipation is building beautifully, he said during our November 8th call. Ticket sales are up 40%. Everyone wants to know who S.H. Montgomery is. The dress arrived by courier on November 10th, a custom Valentino in midnight blue that cost more than Madison's monthly salary. The stylist Sterling hired worked with me via video, selecting jewelry that would photograph perfectly under the ballroom lights. You need to look like success, she said. Understated, but undeniable. Eleanor Whitmore and I rehearsed the reveal sequence twice. She would announce the award, pause for effect, then say, Ladies and gentlemen, S.H. Montgomery is Sophia Harrison. The screens would show my photo, not the frumpy family disappointment, but the best-selling author in designer clothes with 5 books that had conquered the world. Your mother is listed as attending, Eleanor mentioned during our second call. Table 3, representing the Fairmont board. I know, I replied calmly. This will cause quite a stir. That's the point. I spent the evenings writing my speech, crafting each line for maximum impact. No direct attacks on family. That would seem petty. Instead, I'd talk about overcoming doubt, about voices that try to diminish your dreams, about the power of believing in yourself when no one else does. Every word would be a dagger wrapped in silk. 7 more days. The countdown felt like holding my breath before a dive. What do you think Victoria's face will look like when she realizes her failure daughter is actually S.H. Montgomery? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And if this story resonates with you, please share it with anyone who needs to hear about setting boundaries with toxic family members. November 15th arrived crisp and clear in Boston. The Fairmont Copley's ballroom had been transformed into a literary paradise. Thousands of books as centerpieces, Quotes from famous authors projected on the walls, champagne flowing like water. I watched it all through Instagram stories from my hotel room at the Mandarin Oriental, 5 blocks away. Victoria arrived at 6:30 p.m. in her new Oscar de la Renta, posing for photographers with the confidence of someone who belonged. Madison flanked her in Marquesa, telling anyone who'd listen about their family's commitment to the arts. They worked the room like professionals, air-kissing publishers, complimenting critics, ensuring everyone knew the Harrisons were literary patrons. At 7:15, James Sterling approached Victoria near the champagne fountain. I watched through the Boston Globe's live feed as he extended his hand. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm James Sterling. I believe your daughter Sophia will be joining us tonight?" Victoria's smile flickered for just a moment. "I'm afraid Sophia couldn't make it. Prior commitments." "That's impossible," Sterling said, loud enough for others to hear. "She's our honoree." "I think there's been a mistake," Victoria said. "Sophia isn't involved in publishing." Sterling's confusion seemed genuine. He was an excellent actor. "Mrs. Harrison, Sophia is receiving our highest honor tonight. Surely you knew." Madison had overheard and rushed over, her champagne sloshing. "What do you mean, honoree?" "The Author of the Year award. Your sister is S.H. Montgomery." The look on their faces was priceless. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Madison's champagne glass slipped, saved only by a passing waiter's quick reflexes. The people around them had stopped talking, sensing drama unfolding. That's That's not possible," Victoria whispered. Victoria recovered with the speed of someone who'd spent decades managing her image. "Mr. Sterling, there must be some confusion. My daughter Sophia is a freelance writer. She does blog posts, small projects. She couldn't be S.H. Montgomery." Sterling pulled out his phone, showing her something that made her face go white. "This is the contract. Sophia Harrison, also known as S.H. Montgomery, $8.5 million over 5 years." Madison grabbed the phone, staring at it like it might bite her. 8.5 million? The cluster of people around them grew larger. Harold Worthington from Random House had drifted over. Patricia Mills from the New York Times Book Review was openly eavesdropping. The Boston Globe photographer sensed something happening and started shooting. "This has to be a joke," Madison said loudly. "Sophia can barely pay her rent. She borrows money from—" She stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Your daughter," Sterling said, his voice carrying, "has sold over 2 million books worldwide. She's been #1 on the bestseller list for nearly a year. The Montgomery Chronicles is being adapted by Paramount. How did you not know this?" Victoria's carefully constructed composure was cracking. "She never said, 'We would have known.'" S.H. Montgomery insisted on anonymity until tonight, Sterling explained, clearly enjoying himself. "She wanted the reveal to be special. Speaking of which, where is she? The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Madison was frantically Googling on her phone, her face cycling through expressions as she saw the book covers, the reviews, the sales figures. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, she's worth—" "More than both of you combined," someone in the crowd muttered, not quite quietly enough. At exactly 8:30 p.m., Eleanor Whitmore took the stage. The ballroom fell silent, 500 faces turning toward the podium. Victoria and Madison had been ushered to their table, still visibly shaken, surrounded by board members who kept shooting them curious glances. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor began, "tonight we honor excellence in contemporary fiction. Our Author of the Year award goes to someone who has redefined what it means to capture the human experience on the page." The screens around the ballroom lit up with book covers, the Montgomery Chronicles in all their glory. Gasps rippled through the audience. Everyone knew these books. S.H. Montgomery has maintained complete anonymity while achieving unprecedented success, Eleanor continued. 2 million copies sold, 37 languages, a publishing phenomenon who has chosen tonight, in front of you all, to finally reveal their identity. The ballroom doors opened. I stood silhouetted in the entrance, the Valentino dress catching the light like liquid midnight. The photographer's flashes created a strobe effect as I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking against marble with metronomic precision. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor announced, "S.H. Montgomery is Sophia Harrison." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds, then the applause erupted like thunder. People rose to their feet, publishers who'd been chasing S.H. Montgomery for years, critics who'd praised the books without knowing the author, socialites who suddenly realized the Harrison family dynamics were far more complex than they'd imagined. I reached the stage and turned to face the audience. Victoria sat frozen at table 3, her face a masterpiece of shock. Madison had her phone out, recording with shaking hands. The Boston Globe photographer was shooting rapidly, capturing every second. "Good evening," I said into the microphone. "I believe some of you know my mother." The speech I'd practiced in Costa Rica flowed like honey laced with razors. "They say success is the best revenge, but I disagree. Success is simply success. It needs no justification, no validation, especially not from those who never believed in you to begin with." The cameras found Victoria's face, a case study in mortification as 500 people watched her world reshape itself. The woman who'd called me a failure was watching her dismissed daughter accept a $100,000 prize. For years, I was told my writing was a hobby, that I needed a real career, that I was wasting my potential. I paused, letting the words sink in. But every rejection became fuel, every dismissal became determination. To those who said I'd never amount to anything, thank you. You taught me that the only validation that matters comes from within. Madison had stopped recording, her phone hanging limply in her hand. Around her, the other board members were whispering, shooting glances at Victoria that ranged from pity to schadenfreude. The Montgomery Chronicles explores themes of betrayal, ambition, and the price of success, I continued. They say, write what you know, and I've had excellent source material. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Everyone was doing the math. The family that had dismissed Sophia Harrison had been funding their lifestyle criticisms while she quietly built an empire worth millions. Publishers Weekly's Twitter feed was exploding in real time. Breaking. S.H. Montgomery revealed as Sophia Harrison at Boston Literary Awards. Family drama unfolding live. Mother's face is everything. Hashed literary drama. Hash plot twist. The standing ovation when I finished lasted 4 minutes. The entire room on their feet, except for 2 people at table 3 who sat frozen like statues in designer gowns, watching their carefully constructed narrative crumble into dust. They cornered me on the balcony during the cocktail break, Victoria's fingers digging into my arm as she pulled me outside. Madison followed, closing the French doors behind us, trapping me between them and the November night. "How could you do this to us?" Victoria's whisper was venomous. "Humiliating your family in front of everyone?" "Humiliating?" I pulled my arm free, my voice steady as stone. "Like planning to steal my inheritance while I stood outside your door?" Madison's face went white. "You heard?" "Every word." I pulled out my phone, pressing play on the recording I'd made while hiding in the alcove. Their voices filled the night air. "She's so pathetic. Guilt is a powerful motivator. Finally take Grandma's house guilt-free." "You recorded us?" Victoria's outrage was almost comical. "That's illegal." "Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state for phone calls," I said calmly. "But recordings made in public spaces where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy? Perfectly legal. Hotel hallways are public spaces, Victoria. You should know that, being on the board." Madison was calculating rapidly, her legal mind working. "You can't use that. We'll sue." "Go ahead." I pulled out a business card. "This is my lawyer, from Whitman, Sterling and Associates. They represent 8 of the top 10 best-selling authors in America. They're very expensive, but fortunately, I can afford them now." The sound of applause drifted through the doors. Someone else receiving an award, the night continuing without us. "The inheritance," Victoria said desperately. "We need—" Is locked in a trust as of yesterday, ironclad. If anyone attempts to coerce or manipulate me regarding Grandma's estate, the recording goes to the Boston Globe. I believe you know their society columnist? My lawyer, David Whitman, had worked through the night to file the paperwork. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Victoria and Madison at 9 a.m. the next morning, while they were nursing their hangovers and their humiliation. Any attempt to contact Sophia Harrison regarding the Eleanor Montgomery estate will be considered harassment, David explained to them via conference call, which I listened to from my hotel suite. Any attempt to access, claim, or dispute her inheritance will result in immediate legal action and public release of documented evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. Madison tried to argue jurisdiction, but David shut her down with surgical precision. Ms. Harrison, your firm has already received an ethics complaint regarding your attempted coercion of a family member for financial gain. I'd suggest you focus on that, rather than threatening my client. The complaint had been filed that morning. Morrison and Associates took ethics violations seriously, especially when they involved senior associates attempting to steal inheritances. Madison's managing partner would be having a very uncomfortable conversation with her on Monday. This is vindictive, Victoria spat. We're her family. Family doesn't plot to steal from each other, David replied smoothly. My client has been more than generous. She's not pursuing criminal charges for conspiracy to commit fraud, which she could. She's not releasing the recording to the media, which would destroy what's left of your reputation. She's simply protecting what's legally hers. The trust structure was elegant. Grandma's house couldn't be touched without all three granddaughters' consent, but now any attempt to pressure me would trigger automatic legal responses. The other two-thirds would remain frozen until Madison and Jennifer agreed to my buyout terms, fair market value, paid over 5 years, with interest. You've ruined us, Madison said quietly. No, I corrected. You ruined yourselves. I just refuse to be your collateral damage. The rest of the gala became a receiving line of congratulations and barely concealed curiosity. Every publisher in the room wanted to talk to me. Every critic wanted an exclusive. Every socialite wanted to understand how Victoria Harrison's failure daughter had fooled them all. Sophia, Harold Worthington from Random House appeared with champagne. That was quite an entrance. We'd love to discuss your next series. She's under contract with Sterling, James interrupted smoothly, appearing at my elbow like a protective guardian. But I'm sure Sophia appreciates the interest. Victoria, meanwhile, was trapped in her own nightmare. She couldn't leave, that would confirm the humiliation. But staying meant enduring congratulations that felt like slaps. You must be so proud, people kept saying, watching her face for cracks. Such an accomplished daughter. Of course, she managed, her smile like broken glass. We always knew Sophia was special. Madison tried a different approach, attempting to attach herself to my success. She posted a selfie with me that I hadn't agreed to, captioned, "So proud of my brilliant sister, #author life, #family first." The comments were brutal. Didn't you call her pathetic 5 minutes ago? This is the same sister you said would never amount to anything? The secondhand embarrassment is real. She deleted it within an hour, but screenshots were already circulating. Patricia Mills from the New York Times approached as I was leaving. Sophia, that was masterful. The timing, the reveal, the way you let them hang themselves. It's like something out of one of your novels. Life imitates art, I replied. Would you consider an exclusive? The real story behind S.H. Montgomery? I handed her my publicist's card. Call Monday. I think it's time people knew the truth. The Boston Globe's Sunday edition ran with the headline, "Mystery Solved. Best-selling author S.H. Montgomery revealed as Boston's own Sophia Harrison." The photo they used was perfect. Me at the podium, confident and composed, with Victoria visible in the background, her face a study in shock. By Monday, the story had gone national. Publishers Weekly ran a feature, "The S.H. Montgomery Reveal, a Publishing Phenomenon, Steps into the Light." The article mentioned the $8.5 million deal, the Paramount adaptation, the 2 million copies sold. It also, somewhat gleefully, noted the visible surprise of the author's family. The real damage came from social media. Twitter dissected every moment, creating memes from Victoria's expression. The face you make when your failure daughter is worth $8.5 million became a viral sensation. Madison's deleted selfie resurfaced endlessly, each repost adding to her humiliation. Book sales spiked 400% in 48 hours. The Montgomery Chronicles dominated Amazon's top 5 slots. Barnes& Noble reported selling out nationwide. The revelation had done exactly what James Sterling predicted, turned a best-selling series into a cultural phenomenon. But the most devastating blow came from the Boston Society pages. The columnist, who'd been at the Gala, wrote a scathing piece about the danger of underestimating our children and the hubris of Boston's elite. Without naming Victoria directly, everyone knew who she meant. The article ended with, "Perhaps some mothers should spend less time managing boards and more time knowing their daughters." Victoria's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting comments, board members concerned about the optics, society friends suddenly too busy to lunch. The Harrison family name, which she'd spent decades building, had become synonymous with the ultimate parental failure, not recognizing your own child's extraordinary success. The professional consequences came swift and merciless. On Tuesday, Victoria received a call from the Fairmont board chair suggesting she take a leave of absence to focus on family matters. By Wednesday, it was 2 boards requesting her resignation. The optics were toxic. A woman who couldn't recognize brilliance in her own daughter shouldn't be making decisions for cultural institutions. Madison's situation at Morrison and Associates deteriorated rapidly. The ethics review found she'd used firm resources to research inheritance law for personal gain. The attempted coercion of a family member reflected poorly on the firm's reputation. By Thursday, she'd been demoted from senior to junior associate. Her office moved from the corner suite to a windowless cube on the 3rd floor. "They're making an example of me," she sobbed over the phone to Jennifer, who immediately called me. "This isn't fair." The family business audit, triggered by the publicity, revealed more than just the $800,000 debt. There were questionable transfers, inflated invoices, a pattern of financial manipulation that suggested the waterfront disaster was just the tip of the iceberg. Harrison Developments faced bankruptcy by month's end. Extended family members who'd always deferred to Victoria began distancing themselves. Uncle Richard, who'd been ready to pressure me about the inheritance, suddenly remembered a long-planned trip to Florida. Aunt Margaret stopped returning Victoria's calls. The family WhatsApp group, usually buzzing with activity, went silent. Robert, my father, finally found his voice. He moved out of the family home and into a downtown apartment. "I should have stood up for you years ago," he told me over coffee. "I let her convince me you were struggling when you were actually soaring." The empire Victoria had built on perception and status crumbled in less than a week. While my family's world imploded, mine expanded exponentially. The Paramount deal closed at $3 million upfront, with guaranteed sequels if the first film hit certain benchmarks. The studio fast-tracked production, wanting to capitalize on the publicity tsunami. Harvard called on Wednesday, inviting me to speak at their spring lecture series on resilience in the face of familial doubt. MIT wanted me for their entrepreneurship program. Apparently, building a multi-million-dollar brand while being actively undermined by family was a case study worth examining. The deed to Grandma's house was officially transferred to my sole ownership after Madison and Jennifer accepted my buyout terms. I stood in the Victorians' library, where I'd written my first story, and felt her presence. "Words are power, Sophia," she'd said. She was right. I closed on a New York penthouse the following week. Central Park views, a library with floor-to-ceiling windows, space to write the next 10 books. But I kept my Cambridge apartment too, a reminder of where I'd been when everyone thought I was nothing. Sterling Publishing announced my next series at a press conference that made international news. The advance was rumored to be $12 million, though we kept the actual figure private. The theme? Family betrayal and redemption. "Write what you know," I told the reporters with a smile that had edges. My anonymous Twitter account, revealed now as mine, gained 1 million followers in 3 days. Young writers flooded my DMs with stories of their own family doubts, their own struggles for validation. I started a foundation, the Eleanor Montgomery Fund, to support emerging writers whose families didn't believe in their dreams. Success isn't revenge, I posted. Success is freedom. Freedom from others' opinions, their limitations, their small definitions of what you can be. 2 weeks after the gala, my phone rang at 11 p.m. Madison's name on the screen made me hesitate before answering. Sophia? Her voice was thick with tears. Please don't hang up. I stayed silent, letting her fill the space. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was jealous and stupid and cruel. Mom got in my head, made me believe you were the problem when really I was terrified of failing. You tried to steal my inheritance, Madison. I know. I was drowning in debt, trying to keep up with the other partners, buying things I couldn't afford to look successful. And Mom kept saying you didn't deserve Grandma's house because you weren't doing anything with your life, and I believed her. She was sobbing now, ugly crying that sounded real for once. I lost everything. My position, my reputation, my fiancé. Did you know Thomas left? Said he couldn't be with someone who would betray their own sister. Mom won't help. She's too busy trying to save herself. Dad won't talk to me. I have $300,000 in debt and no way to pay it. What do you want from me, Madison? Nothing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe just forgiveness? Someday? I thought about Grandma, about what she'd say, about cycles of hurt and whether they had to continue forever. I'll loan you the money for your debt, I said finally. Interest-free, 10-year repayment plan. But there are conditions. Therapy, twice a week, financial counseling. And you never, ever speak about my business publicly again. Sophia, Forgiveness will take time, Madison. Trust will take longer. But everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. She was quiet for a moment. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The real work starts now. Christmas came with a proposal. Dinner at a neutral restaurant, not the family estate. No gift exchange, no forced traditions, just food and an attempt at conversation. Robert made the reservation at a quiet place in Cambridge, somewhere without memories attached. Victoria arrived 15 minutes late, designer bag clutched like armor, her face showing the strain of 2 months of social exile. Madison came with Robert, having moved back in with him after losing her apartment. I arrived alone, on my terms. Thank you for coming, Robert said, ever the peacemaker. We ordered in silence, the weight of everything unsaid filling the space between us. Finally, Victoria spoke. I've been seeing someone, a therapist. The admission seemed to physically pain her. She says I have issues with control, with needing to define success for everyone around me. It was the closest to an apology I'd ever get from her. That's a good start, I said carefully. I read your books, she continued. All of them. The mother character in book 3 is fiction, I interrupted. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental. She smiled thinly. Of course. Madison had been quiet, but finally looked up. I'm in therapy too, twice a week, like you required. It's helping, understanding why I needed external validation so badly. We're all works in progress, Robert said gently. The dinner was awkward, stilted, but it was something. We set boundaries that night. No financial discussions, no career comparisons, no rehashing the past without therapeutic supervision. Family would be a privilege earned through respect, not an automatic right granted by blood. Maybe Easter? Victoria suggested tentatively as we left. Another dinner? We'll see, I said. It wasn't yes, but it wasn't no. It was possibility. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Winters, had been recommended by James Sterling after he noticed I was struggling with the aftermath of success. Vindication can be its own trauma, she explained during our third session. You spent so long fighting to be seen that you don't know how to exist now that you are. She was right. The anger that had fueled me for years had nowhere to go. I'd won, definitively and publicly, but victory felt hollow without the war. Write about it, she suggested. Not for publication, just for you. So I did. Pages and pages about growing up invisible, about achievements dismissed, about love that came with conditions I could never meet, about the guilt of succeeding despite them, not because of them, about the strange grief of losing a family I'd never really had. The new book emerged from those sessions, not about revenge or revelation, but about rebuilding, about choosing yourself when no one else does, about setting boundaries with people who share your DNA but not your dreams. I turned Grandma's house into a writer's retreat, opening it 4 times a year to emerging artists whose families didn't support their work. The first cohort included a poet whose parents wanted him to be a doctor, a novelist whose husband called her writing selfish, and a playwright whose mother had burned her first manuscript. Success isn't about proving them wrong, I told them during orientation. It's about proving yourself right. The retreat was free. I covered everything from housing to meals to mentorship. It was what I'd needed at 25, crying in that Victorian library, wondering if everyone was right about my worthlessness. Madison sent a donation check. Small, but symbolic. Victoria sent a note. Your grandmother would be proud. Maybe she was finally understanding what mattered. A year later, the landscape had completely changed. Victoria had rebuilt herself quietly, taking a position with a small arts nonprofit that actually did community work rather than just hosting galas. The salary was a fraction of her former income, but she seemed lighter somehow. The therapy was working. She'd even apologized, really apologized, without qualifiers or deflection. Madison had climbed back to mid-level associate at a different firm, one that valued work-life balance over billable hours. She'd sold the Tesla, moved to a modest apartment in Somerville, and started dating a teacher who'd never heard of the Montgomery Chronicles until their third date. He likes me for me, she told me over coffee, not my family name or my job title. Robert had filed for divorce, finally. He'd taken up painting again, something Victoria had mocked as frivolous 30 years ago. His watercolors of Boston Harbor were actually good enough that a small gallery in the South End had offered him a show. My sixth book debuted at #1, but the achievement felt different now. Calmer. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The movie adaptation of Book 1 had wrapped filming, with an Oscar-nominated actress playing the protagonist who discovers her own power despite family betrayal. The parallels weren't lost on anyone. Family dinners happened monthly now, still at neutral restaurants, still with boundaries firmly in place. We were learning to be people together, not roles. Victoria could ask about my writing without offering advice. Madison could share her struggles without competing. Robert could exist without mediating. We're like a family in recovery, Madison said once, and she wasn't wrong. We were all recovering from the mythology of the Harrisons, the story we'd told ourselves about who we were supposed to be. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that was enough. I stood in Grandma's library on the second anniversary of the reveal, watching the latest cohort of writers work at their laptops, lost in worlds of their own creation. One looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. The same grateful, disbelieving smile I'd worn when James Sterling first believed in me. The lesson I'd learned wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was simpler and harder than that. Your worth isn't determined by who believes in you. It's determined by whether you believe in yourself. Blood doesn't grant automatic access to your success, your peace, or your future. Family is a relationship, not an obligation. It requires mutual respect, genuine care, and the ability to see each other as whole people, not just supporting characters in someone else's narrative. Sometimes distance creates respect. Sometimes absence makes people realize what they've lost. Sometimes you have to disappear completely before anyone notices you were there. My mother had called me a failure for a decade. My sister had laughed at my dreams, but their opinions had only held power because I'd given it to them. The moment I chose myself, truly chose myself, everything changed. The Harrisons are different now. Smaller, quieter, but more real. We're not perfect, but we're trying. Victoria reads my books and offers genuine feedback. Madison celebrates my wins without comparison. Robert sends me his paintings signed Your Proud Father. I am Sophia Harrison, best-selling author, survivor of family betrayal, builder of boundaries, and I am finally, completely, unapologetically free. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been dismissed by the people who should support you most, please share your experience in the comments. Like and subscribe if you believe in the power of choosing yourself. You deserve respect, regardless of who refuses to give it. Until next time, remember, your success is the best response to their doubt.